Hello y'all, and I hope you're ready because today we're going to be hitting up the Ubers 8 times with 8 different weapon sets split between the Frenzy Barb and the SMITER. Trying to show you alternative weapons, performance of budget builds, and how good is Grief actually. But for that, I guess we need a control group, a benchmark of sorts, and no better character shows that off than a full-on, decked-out SMITER Paladin. Now not only does this guy do good, he also manages to look sensational during it. I mean, just look at War Eve hitting on him. Remember buddy, you can look but you can't touch, for this is expensive gear, and when we're talking about expensive Uber gear for SMITERs, it is hard to not talk about Grief. Now this is kind of the reincarnation of the SMITER that I showed in my Paladin post-mini playthrough, so I will just breeze over the gear which is the same, but the reason that this weapon has stayed is because it is the best in slot to face the Ubers. Maybe only rivaled by Last Wish, but until I get a better Last Wish than this one, I'll just make do with the OP Phase Blade containing Eth tier low Mal Ral. Its companion is another OP base of an ethereal sacred targe containing Vex Ohm Ist Dole Exile. I mean, yes, this base is ethereal, giving it a base defense boost which is further enhanced by the enhanced defense modifier and the Defiance aura, and the max cold and fire res is Q2, but the reason that this shield exists is because of its chance to cast level 5 life tap on striking. That too, a 15% chance. I like those chances, especially since my backup over that are these things. What can I say about these gloves that hate me that I haven't already, except that they took me ages to find, never cast life tap when I want them to, but I would still rather use them over anything else for the extra chance to cast life tap, because with Grief, you don't really need any other source of IAS. That's why, unlike the Frenzy Barb, I could go all in with the armor, the best armor a paladin can wield for Ubers, Chains of Honor. Now I didn't have this back when I created the post-mini playthrough, so I am stoked to put that 65 all res to use, which essentially makes this rune word. That and the lovely base of an Archon plate, of course. Looking equally lovely is the headgear, which is G-Face. I changed this from Kira since Chains of Honor took care of my resistances, and thus I could focus more on offense here with additional Crushing Blow. Speaking of additional Crushing Blow, I also switched to Goblin Toes from Go Riders because if there's 3 things you can never have too much of while fighting Ubers, it is chance to cast life tap, resistances, and Crushing Blow. Now my jewelry is pretty nice, as with Mara's providing me with 29 crucial all res points, also giving +2 to skills which are going to come in very handy when I will be on my switch of Call to Arms, as it will boost my battle orders, which is brilliant. This is paired with 2 elemental absorb rings, starting off with the Ravenfrost providing me with Cold Absorb, Dexterity for max block, and most importantly, cannot be frozen. This is a very common and easy to find ring. Something on the opposite side of the spectrum is Wisp Projector, especially one that is this nice with 20% lightning absorb and 19% magic find, one off of perfect for MF. Finally, my belt is where done goes. I changed this from String of Years because I didn't really need the lifesteal from that since I have multiple sources of life tap, but the 39 vitality along with the 15% damage reduction from this belt will come in quite handy indeed. Finally, we have the charms. All life and resistance charms boosting my 2 primary forms of defense, and with that my HP with battle orders is above 3000 and my res is stupidly overstacked. The skills on this guy are standard fare and some that everyone can guess. Max Smite because you're a smiter and it will increase your damage. Max Holy Shield because your life revolves around shields and it will increase your block rate, defense and smite damage. Then max fanaticism, because that is the primary, or in my case the only aura that I will use on this guy. Now with those 60 skill points all spent, what to do with the rest? Well, dump them into defensive auras, more specifically resist lightning and resist cold. You could go for fire as well, but what these do is that they give you 1 extra max res per 2 hard points invested. So since I have max resist lightning, my lightning res is sitting at 85 at the moment. Whether it would be that high against Mephisto, it won't. It just won't, but it is still nice to have. What's also nice is to have a defensive mercenary. That is to say that instead of offense like my Frenzy Barb's Merc, this guy focuses more on FHR and resistances, and it starts off at his weapon, Obedience. Solid overall choice with great damage and an ethereal great poleaxe. Of course that 30 FHR and 21 all res is nice, and so is that 40% chance of crushing blow. It does lack attack speed, but treachery saves the day in that regards all day, and it also gives him a chance to cast Fade, with which finally he has a Vamp Gaze for some damage reduction and lifesteal as well. Now finally with this guy we have some offhand alternatives, some utility items if you will. Starting off with a teleport staff, these always come in handy while finding the mini Ubers. You don't really need Enigma in my opinion. This honestly does the job very well, allowing you to hop walls and you can charge around the rest of the time anyways. Then we have a life tap wand. This is here, but I doubt I'll need it since I have such a high chance to cast life tap anyways. And finally we have treachery for our own pre-buff for that 5% chance of getting level 5 Fade, which is... yeah, always a barrel of laughs. Now as for the run, I started off in the Matron's Den because that's just how we roll on this channel, or something actually cool that the kids say. I'll tell you what is cool though, is how good this guy is at killing Ubers. I mean, we all know he's the best, no doubt, but when you actually see him in action against one of the most dangerous monsters in the game, and how all his gear just comes together with that crushing blow, life tap, and of course, grief with that massive carry towards the low end of the HP, it's just brilliant. One thing that he can struggle with is while trying to find the mini Ubers, getting surrounded by various minions, and that's honestly just the nature of the character. Now with no area of effect, it's not that you can't kill these guys, it's really slow to do so. On single targets though, he absolutely slays. Izzy is not that good in fairness anyways. I think they just added him because they wanted to keep the theme of 3 things going. Yeah, doesn't really offer any trouble at all actually. Duriel fight can offer trouble if you get surrounded with mosquitoes which are physical immune, but you can tell my luck was pretty incredible here, as I was able to find Duriel pretty quickly. Also the mercenary was taking a chill pill. No worries, as much as I hyped him in the beginning, I really have not ended up needing him at all, which is a good thing overall. Let's see if the trend continues. So after all those 3 plebs were down, it was time for 3 bigger plebs. I faded up again and went on to take Bale. Now he was the big Uber I was able to separate first, and I had no problems taking him on, since against him I got an instant life tap proc. His mana burn attack and his mana burn minions are annoying, but they are no problem that a single mana potion can't fix. In fact, this may be the only potion I had to drink during this whole process, which is kind of bananas. What is also bananas is how easily this guy takes on Mephisto. Yeah, after the Frenzy Barb encounter, I was thinking that the minions were going to be a nuisance. Not for this guy. And guess what? I didn't even have my Chains of Honor on for the fight. Would you look at that? This is borderline BM at this point. This guy is just showing off his crazy absorb and taking no damage with 6 lightning resistance. Also, since I already got caught with my pants down and didn't get punished, No point pulling them up anyways, so I said screw it and fought Diablo with the treachery on as well. Who needs resistances when you have instant life tap, 100% chance to hit, and insane damage that keeps on giving? That, ladies and gentlemen, was a well-suited benchmark placed by this guy on the highest of pedestals. Now, given that this fight was so easy, I didn't expect the rewards to be too amazing, and yeah, good thing I didn't, because 1220 Paladin. I already have a way better Paladin torch, and just... ugh. The only thing worse than a duplicate is a worse duplicate. Well, maybe a bit more of a budget approach will yield good rewards, and for that, we have this guy. The budget-ish SMITER. This is the build that all the other YouTuber guide people will tell you, this is very cheap guys, and you should easily have this type of gear just laying around, but truth be told, this does require some farming. Now, how much farming this can require is always going to depend on your luck, which is why I found a little difficult to pick out the gear options in here, but in the end I settled for all the items that I personally was able to farm up with a start-up Blizzard Sorceress against Mephisto in Hell over 1,000 runs. That is something I think is realistically achievable, even if you play the game just casually. You can eventually build up to this kind of gear. So with that preliminary info, let's start off with my budget-ish weapon of a unique mighty scepter, the Heaven's Light. By far one of the most popular choices for smiters who can't afford grief, and you can see why. This is an awful roll, by the way. 6 off of anti-perfect enhanced damage, not that you'll be needing it with this guy, but also this only has 1 socket out of a possible 2. 2 sockets help in getting an extra IAS for this weapon, given that it already has 20, and with 1 shale I am only able to get the total up to 40, 10% shy of the max breakpoint. Otherwise, we have some really nice stats of +2 to Paladin skills, which are a quaint but nice addition. But what makes this weapon really is that 33% chance of crushing blow. That allows me, along with the rest of my gear, to get the coveted and exciting figure of 100% crushing blow, and I am stoked to see what that does in action. Now, I mentioned it needed other gear support, and that includes the armor because it is Duress with the aforementioned 15% crushing blow provided here. Even otherwise, this is a great offensive based armor with 33% chance of open wounds, which helps out tremendously when you lack the OP damage of grief. This armor also is nice defensively as well, providing 40% FHR, which actually allows me to hit a better FHR breakpoint than even my Posh Paladin, which is amazing. And also some all res and additional cold res provided by that and Thul runes respectively are always nice. Then we have G-Face. I mean, we all know how good this thing is, and the fact that this made the cut for my Posh Pally should speak to that, but here it pairs up nicely with Duress, providing much of the similar stats of 35% crushing blow, 30 FHR, and also 15 all res thanks to the rune that I have in there. Then to round the crushing blow to a total of 100, we have Goblin Toes. Now, Gore Riders would actually be almost as good with this guy, because even with those you could get to 98% crushing blow, which is still great. But when I was this close, I just wanted to go all in. 100% crushing blow just sounds cooler than 98 anyways, so I went with the all or nothing option of Goblin Toes. Now that was a nice set of items providing me with a lot of offense. For defense, I have a similar set as well, and it starts off with the Ravenfrost. Obviously the Dex helps for max block, cannot be frozen is essential because you're melee, but 20% cold absorb is what gets it into the elemental absorb trio. That's because partnering this is Thunder God's Vigor. Now you don't use the Lightning Amazon skills because duh, but other than that, this is a super useful belt with 20 to strength and vitality, which is not Trump change. Then you have 10% max lightning res, which takes my lightning res up to 95%, which is a bigger flex than my Posh Pally could pull off. and this guy also has 20 straight lightning absorb to go with it. Now finishing up the trio is Dwarf Star. Now I didn't want to use Wisp here since you obviously can't find it at Hell Mephisto at all, and Thunder Gods will hopefully take care of my lightning absorb, so I went for some fire absorb with Dwarf to help against Diablo. Another option for this slot could be a BK ring, but you gotta ask yourself, what is the point? Dwarf itself gives 40 to life, and the +1s to skills from Volcatos won't really benefit me since in this quote-unquote budget build, I'm not using a CTA for obvious reasons. Therefore, Dwarf is cheap, it is something I found at Mephisto, so it works. Another piece of gear that I found at Mephisto was Drax. Yeah, you guys remember that, right? How I totally found these at Hell Mephisto? Well, technically I did, just with another character and another 4,000 runs later, but anyways, what is important is that you can find these at Mephisto, and it is pretty much the only source of life tab that you can find in there, which makes it crucial. Now I don't trust these, as I never have, and so I will be using a manual source of life tab in tandem, but these will hopefully provide a nice automatic backup, hopefully. Keeping the train of items I found at Mephisto swiftly going, we have High Lords. Now this is nice because of the +1 to skills, 35% lightning res, which is awesome, and 20% IAS, which is what gets me to the fastest smiting breakpoint. This is also where the argument of what you end up finding comes in. You may not find High Lords from 1,000 Mephisto runs, but instead find a 2 open socket Heaven's Light, which will serve you pretty much the same purpose. In that case, you could just put an all-res prismatic amulet here, or if you're lucky, maybe even a Mara's. It just depends on what you end up finding. One thing that I did get, and for it I cannot express any regret, is a Hawes. This probably is the best item in my stash that I never end up using because it is outclassed by Spirit on a Hammerdin and Exile on a Smiter. Not today though. This fits the bill perfectly, being an item that you can find at Mephisto, and one I did, and it is fantastic with +2 to pally skills, +2 to combat skills, excellent base smite damage, 20 to strength and vitality, a massive 72 to all res with an rune, and great stats for blocking, which, with Holy Shield active, makes it quite easy to reach max block. Now while we're here in my stat screen, you can see that my res is awesome. Now part of that credit goes to my charms as well, which as you can see I have halved from my posh pally. That I think is a good estimate of wealth that you can hope to accumulate while doing 1,000 Mephisto runs. Bonus points if you follow my getting started with MF method. Now I do have an Annie in here since my videos are mostly focused on solo single player play, and getting this thing in Plugy is a piece of cake. Even with a startup Blizzard Sorceress, I got like 3 of these while doing Mephisto runs. Now I don't have a torch because that is what this guy is supposed to get you, and with the overall reductions in my charms, my life is a pretty reduced 1488, and that won't be boosted by battle orders because like I mentioned, an Amral Malist Ohm doesn't really scream budget to me. Now the Merc is more or less the same, and if the last guy's performance is any evidence, he's going to be largely irrelevant anyways because he's going to be largely dead half the time. Especially now since you won't be able to support him with a CTA in the offhand. But what I will have in my offhand will be a teleport staff because like I showed last time, this is great for finding mini Ubers. Life Tap Wand as an additional utility is going to be an absolute must, and it is great because you can buy these starting Nightmare from various vendors. Finally, to push my res over the edge, I do have Treachery with 5% chance to cast level 5. Now in action, this guy does struggle a wee bit against minions, but against bosses, once this guy gets going, he really goes. Drax helped out here since life tap cost quite fast from them, and then The 100% crushing blow absolutely crushed Lilith. Combine that with the super fast attack speed, 100% chance to hit, and pretty much no chance to die. This may have been just as good as Grief, if not better. That's impressive. Now against Iswal, he has a fun property of teleporting across gaps while chasing you, but he doesn't usually do that over gaps as big as this, but then he totally did. Alright then, that works for me. Still, even without, I could have cleared out his goons with Smite and the life tap wand, quite like I cleared him out in no time at all. Now this near flawless run was snapped at Duriel since for some reason I had me teleport staff in my offhand instead of my life tap wand, and during the switch my pally ran into this mishap. Don't try this at home, kids. Always keep life tap in the offhand, because with that this guy can handle the big freezing bug really well. Now yes, you will be at a reduced frame for attack speed and you will probably get distracted by mosquitoes and almost die again, but honestly, if you just stick to the game plan, hit him with guaranteed crushing blows and let life tap do its thing, your pally can survive just fine. No need to even pay attention to the other monsters surrounding you as long as you can take Duriel down. Who needs Grief when you can go effective but cheap? Well, it's not exactly cheap, but whatever. We'll go with it because it half rhymes. Also because this guy really doesn't need Grief. He does excellent as it is with the main Ubers, just gotta cast life tap beforehand and then get in. With 49 lightning res, Mephisto can come close to demolishing you with his minions, but that 100% chance to hit with Smite, you just don't know how good it is until you sit there missing 30% of your attacks with a Frenzy Barb. It is absolutely glorious to just heal back every bit of HP with every hit, and that's what makes this guy amazing. Now against Diablo, that higher FHR breakpoint came in clutch because I was getting hit from every side with his very large minions, but the 4-frame hit recovery helped me recuperate quick and land those smites in quick succession to keep alive and make sure that Diablo wasn't. Now with Bale, it was a little annoying because I had to circle merry-go-rounds to get a clear shot at him because of the sheer number of minions surrounding him. In the end, I just gave in and went through the minions and took him on. Mana potions help out here, and also having pre-casted life tap is awesome. Also 100% crushing blow. I mean, that makes this fight super quick, to the point that you really do not miss the raw damage from Grief. Upped Hawes still does a hefty chunk by itself. Therefore we can just stand there in glory, or actually just hurry away from there, still in glory, but with our reward of the unique Lar charm, hopefully a better one with considerably less expensive gear, and yes it is. 1817 Zon. Another duplicate albeit, but a substantial upgrade to the one that my Frenzy Barbarian found, so I'll take it. That thus was our budget paladin. Well, we saw what he can do, but what about the Redeemer paladin? So we've seen what the budgeter can do, but what about the Redeemer? That's right. What happens if you identify a mighty scepter and it turns out to be the uglier cousin, the Redeemer instead of the Heaven's Light? Are you SOL, or are the stats on this much underrated scepter going to be something that will hold? This experiment will find out, and also is going to act twofold. One, in showing how good the viability of this particular weapon under uber pressure is, and two, it is going to attempt to answer the lifelong debate that D2 nerds squabble over: what is better for ubers, damage or crushing blow? Well, this is stepping in for the damage corner from the same base of a mighty scepter, but having plus 118 damage modifier, which, as a few of you may know, adds directly to the base damage of the weapon, after which all the percentage modifiers are applied on it. This is the same stat that makes Grief what it is, and although this thing isn't exactly Grief by itself, having half the stats and lacking a fast base, this really is the next best thing. Now with Grief you can get up to a whopping 400 damage to your weapon base, whereas this offers a more modest 60 to 120 boost, off of which I have a very decent 118 roll. Now it still has the +2 to pally skills, which is nice, but what it loses from Heaven's Light is 20% increased attack speed and of course 33% crushing blow. Now on my last character I did have 100% crushing blow, 108 to be exact, so taking off 33% off would have still left me at 75% crushing blow. That to me felt a little too much, something that would really skew the results, so I decided to make it more obvious that we're substituting crushing blow here, which is why I decided to take off my Guillaume's face. The replacement for that was Endariel's, and this again also serves two purposes. One, it allows me to showcase the damage side more instead of the full-on focus on crushing blow, since this thing adds +2 to skills, which increases my damage from smite and fanaticism, albeit not by much. It also gives me 20% IAS that I lost while switching from Heaven's Light, so it ends up putting me back at the max 50 IAS breakpoint required for smite. Now again, I would like to point out that I am deliberately cutting down on my crushing blow here. I know G-Face with a 15% IAS jewel would have worked arguably better, but the whole point is to find a balance between crushing blow and damage, and this setup brings the overall crushing blow down to a much more reasonable 40%. Now another thought that a few people might have is, well, if you really wanted to do a crushing blow versus damage showcase, shouldn't you do one with the 0% crushing blow? And to that I would answer no, because I'm not an idiot. I don't need to do that test because I can already tell you that the setup with crushing blow is going to be way faster. This is not a how good is crushing blow really. We all know it is bloody amazing. There's a reason that you need a rune as high and as valuable as Burr to get that stat, right? What this comparison is hopefully trying to seek is the optimal balance between damage and crushing blow, and can the latter be substituted by the former and gotten away with? Or maybe even produce better results. Okay, hopefully that clears up what we're actually trying to do here. Now to actually do it, we need to keep a tight control group for which I have the exact same rest of the gear. Everything is identical for the same reason, including the charms and the sometimes existing mercenary. Even the offhand weapons are the same and will be used for the same teleporting purpose, manual life tap control, and also same is the pre-buff with treachery for the 5% chance to cast level. Right, getting into it now. Gotta say, killing minions around mini Ubers does seem faster, ever so slightly. However, you know, it's not really about whether you can kill the goons on your way to finding the 3 lesser Ubers, but you shouldn't. You're here to find their queen. You're a man of honor and respect. Whoa, that's a big scary lady. Okay, yeah. Everybody's honorable until Lilith says, "Fear me." Now this guy actually handles Lilith pretty well though. However, this fight seemed considerably slower than my last one. Now I'm no speedrunner with professional timing gear, but just eyeballing things off of my timeline, I can tell you that this guy turned out to be slower than the crushing blow guy by about 17.236 seconds. Or to put it into another words, he literally took twice as long as compared to our budget-ish pally, which is a lot. Now to be fair, the budget pally did have his mercenary alive the whole time while fighting Lilith, so the results could be a little skewed, so let's not jump to any conclusions yet, but still, it is surprising since I thought that if there would be any huge differences, it wouldn't really be in the mini Ubers, but more in the higher health monsters. Now Izzy is not one of them. If anything, he's probably the lamest Uber with the lowest life and damage output. Still, you can tell in this fight that he does do a fair bit of damage here and there, and this fight, just from a feel, did go on a little bit longer, lasting 18 seconds to the previous 10-second shutout from the 100% crushing blow. So yeah, I guess with those two results now proving the same thing, I guess we've got the answer to that question. However, let's look at the positives for this guy now, shall we? Well, he didn't die to Duriel in a switching accident, that's one. And for two, yes, he is a little slower here, obviously being distracted by this very annoying mana burn beetle. He did lag quite a bit behind, but he's not the slowest. He's still getting the job done, and when you're playing casually, just trying to get some torches for your favorite characters to deck them out, you don't really mind the speed too much at all. What you do mind though is what happened against Mephisto. Ouch. Yeah, I think the reasoning for this might be the slightly lower FHR breakpoint I had to settle with this guy. Either that or it was just Mephisto being Mephisto. Can't really tell, could be both honestly. Still, like I mentioned, he does get the job done. Sure, at the expense of a few more close calls, he still gets in there and gets out with a victory like a champ. Now with Bale, I didn't want to repeat the merry-go-round skit, so I just went straight in, got it going with him with Diablo blasting me in the face as well. That sounded better in my head. Anyways, I had to stop mid-attack though because it seemed like Bale just teleported away mid-fight because he didn't want none of this heat. So I drew myself back, readjusted, and got after him again and then finished him off. Again, slower because of his higher HP, 100% crushing blow here was ever so nice, but this also gets the job done sufficiently well. Finally, we had Diablo, and the usual surrounded by pet lord shenanigans. So yeah, overall, hopefully I was able to show you that the Redeemer can hold his own. It did prove to be better in one instance, which was against minions surrounding Lilith, so that's nice, but 100% crushing blow is just excellent if you can get it. Even still, having this weapon with like G-Face and having a 75% crushing blow would be lovely too. Just put a 15 increased attack speed jewel in the G-Face and you'll be golden. Speaking of golden, it had been done, ladies and gentlemen. The Barb Torch is here. 1115, so an absolutely woeful one. But hey, a Barb Torch is better than no Barb Torch. We take it and we move. Also, you know what? Enough of this budgety crap. Let's get back to the all-expense paid non-stop train ride to hell with another one of those Richie rich characters with pretty much the exact same gear like the Grief SMITER, except for said Grief. In place, I have the best item I have ever found in this game, Stormlash. Nay, a perfect Stormlash. Obviously an amazing and rare find on its own. This one is with perfect enhanced damage and perfect lightning absorb and perfect... No, that's all the rolls it has, but still, perfect. Yeah, I'm very proud of this find, and some people in the comments were like, yeah, only if it was ethereal as well, lamo. And I'm like, no, I'm glad that it is not ethereal because I actually like to use the rare items I find. Therefore, I'm going to be using this thing today to smack some Ubers. Now let's address the jewel first. For the best item I've found in the game, it is only fitting that I put in the best jewel I've ever found in the game. And don't laugh, it's a 15% increased attack speed, 9% enhanced damage jewel. Look, I'm sorry, alright? I tried my best. I did 9,000 runs. The game didn't give me anything better, okay? Well, the ED doesn't really matter anyways, but the IAS sure does. With level 30 Fanaticism, you need 32 increased attack speed with a Scourge, and this weapon comes with an infuriating 30% IAS base, so it was a match made in heaven pretty much. Now, like I mentioned before, the perfect roll on enhanced damage is not going to matter for this guy, but what is going to matter is some of the other excellent stats that this thing has. First of all, which is the chance to cast level 10 static field. Now that is very good against 5 of the 6 Ubers, the 1 out of 6 being Uncle Mephisto. Obviously his lightning res is maxed out of his ass, So for him, the other two excellent stats really help out, those being the 33% chance of crushing blow and 9 lightning absorb, combined with the 20% on my wisp. I pretty much don't need any lightning res against Mephisto at all. I still do have max res due to my ridiculous gear. I mean, this kind of really is the fun of doing Ubers, especially to me, is to do MF runs, find ridiculous and rare gear, and then use a combo to kill some of the toughest monsters in the game, and this guy is just the personification of that. Finally, the utility tools are a teleport staff, a life tap wand which I don't think I'll use, and treachery with 5% chance to cast. Now getting into the gameplay, you can just tell from the Lilith fight that this guy is going to destroy stuff. Interestingly, I seem to reduce Lilith's life faster at first, but struggled at the low end. This is where grief really earns its keep. That raw base damage is the reason you're able to finish off the Ubers so quickly. Whereas with this guy, yes, you have 93% crushing blow and chance to cast static field, which is nice in the upper ends of the HP, but you do lose out a little bit when it comes down to your raw damage. That being said, I still destroyed Iswol. Well, no, I didn't destroy him in this one. My battle orders and fade had run out, so I had to retreat mid-fight, mainly because I didn't want to get surrounded by his goons. Izzy himself is no problem. Taking the conversation further though, I guess you can really see Stormlash as an analogy to something like Last Wish. Meanwhile, I'm fighting mosquitoes here. These are annoying, but the knockback from Smite helps you swat them away, so yeah, where was I? Right, Last Wish. Now, I know that Last Wish adds tons of extra stuff apart from Crushing Blow, like Might Aura, another life tap source, and chance to cast Fade, and is pretty much an all amenities inclusive uber ass kicking machine, no other gear needed. However, the reality is that if you are in a position to choose between Last Wish and Grief, you will have the luxury of having a superior source of life tap like Exile. You will have another superior source of Fade like Treachery. So if we just value the offensive capabilities and take into account that Last Wish will probably do equal damage to what my Stormlash is doing here, you can see why people prefer Grief over it. That raw damage is just too dang good, man. Also, I have a feeling that we've been here for a while and Fade has not casted. Do I gotta put on the cricket sound effect here as well? No, wait. There we go. Alright then, with all the comparisons and stuff out of the way, let's just enjoy the domination of this guy with the Stormlash. First, against Mephisto. Now you'll see that I'm taking no lightning damage from him, but what you won't guess is that my lightning res was -6 at this point. That's the magic of lightning absorb, my friends. Also, I totally meant to leave the treachery on again, and not to put the chains of honor back. Yep, yet again, just to make that point. Right? Remember boys, there are no accidents, just happy little mistakes. I mean, when you've got gear this good, there are no accidents, period. I mean, this guy is literally fighting the Ubers as if it was a walk in the park, in the most literal and figurative way. I mean, especially after I saw how well I handled Mephisto, I had pretty much no reason to respect Diablo or Bale, and thus I just went in and came out just as fresh at pretty much full health. Something else you may have noticed as well, throughout the entire Uber run, my mercenary didn't even die once. The Grief Smiter couldn't even accomplish that, so I guess Stormlash is greater than Grief, confirmed guys, right? And with that, the reward we get is another Barb Torch, this time 1619. Boy, someone really wants me to do some Barb Uber runs, huh? Alright game, you shall ask, and I shall deliver in the poshest mannerism possible. Now since it is posh, you know that he's gotta have Grief. Now I've talked enough about this weapon in this video. Only thing different to note here is that 34% increased attack speed is enough to get me over the fastest breakpoint, since with a phase blade plus cryptic sword you only need 20% IAS at level 26 frenzy, which is exactly what I have. Speaking of the cryptic sword, shout out to dbrunski for using this highly underrated weapon and bringing it to my attention, Kingslayer. This weapon is really good and offers great returns for no high runes required. The IAS isn't worth anything since Frenzy only uses primary weapon IAS, however, Crushing Blow, Open Wounds, and Prevent Monster Heal arguably are the 3 most important stats while killing high health monsters in the game, and you get all of that in one slot. That's very nice. With my gear, this weapon has 93% crushing blow chance, which is great. That other gear that enables this is G-Phase, providing 35% crushing blow and also FHR, and then the usual suspect of Goblin Toes with 25% crushing blow. Now those 4 gear pieces form my offensive core. To support that, I have Angelics. Now this is different from all the SMITERs since Smite always hits, whereas other melee attackers are plagued by the attack rating curse, which can be subdued quite a lot by Angelics since this ring gives you almost 1000 attack rating base, which is invaluable. The amulet also adds 75 to life and 20% damage taken to mana, which is really nice, but really the reason to have this on is the attack rating bonus, absolutely crucial. Speaking of, for the other ring I have the very obvious suspect of Ravenfrost. Attack rating, dex, cannot be frozen, love it, gotta have it. Another gotta have it against Ubers is Dracule's Gloves. This is the only source of life tab that you can get on a Frenzy Barb, lest you're rich enough to get a Last Wish in your secondary slot, but these hopefully will carry me. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course they won't. I will 100% use a life tab wand on swap. Some gear pieces I have are actually reliable though, which includes Verdungos, which gives me really nice damage reduction and a huge vitality bonus, and then finally Chains of Honor. The best armor to do Ubers in my humble opinion. 2 skills is nice on the Barb since it boosts everything, life with battle orders, res with natural res, attack rating and damage, but what really makes this armor is the 8% damage reduction and those 65 all res. Absolutely huge to get that beautiful golden max res in the stats. Now it is helped by charms, which are res and life small charms and beefy attack rating grand charms. I prefer these to max damage ones since I think that I get more mileage out of them. Also, I have a shiny new torch and a bit old but still very usable, Annie. For skills, usual suspect of max frenzy, cause of course you do, you're a frenzy barb and you get your damage and attack rating through that skill. Then max your weapon mastery, in this case sword mastery for damage, attack rating and crit chance. Then I went for 2 points in natural res. I really just dumped my extra points in here. That's because my gear is really good enough, so I got to focus on damage more and I maxed double swing as a synergy for frenzy. You can mix and match this depending on how much res your gear provides you. Now in Warcries I have 1 point into Howl to scare away minions, and it really helps while doing mini Ubers as well. Then 1 point into Shout and Battle Command, and then max battle orders. I didn't do that in my post mini playthrough and regretted it in hindsight because it's such a big boost in life and it absolutely makes a night and day difference in survivability against Ubers. You'll see. One thing that doesn't make that night and day difference is my mercenary. That's because I expect him to die more than half the time. As you can see, he's a more offensive based merc featuring Infinity with Conviction to lowers enemies' defenses. Of course, as I was informed recently that the Conviction aura won't work against Mephisto, He won't live long enough to see Mephie's face anyways, but the other Ubers like Bale and all the mini Ubers will hopefully be nicer to him. The whole idea behind him is to let him do as much damage as possible and use his offense as his defense with life tap. Let's see how well that works out. Finally, we have the utility tools. I have dual Hodos on Switch to get +6 to battle orders. Teleport stuff, which is very nice for jumping walls. Less so with this guy because I just end up running around since your faster run walk is so good with him, especially after a couple of frenzy hits. Life tap wand, a must bring as mentioned before. Here I also have a demon limb. This is more to show that yes, I know people use demon limb for boosting attack rating, but all I have is this ethereal one since I lost my normal one, so I can't use it. LOL. If I had a non-eth one though, I would 100% use it since the attack rating boost is very valuable. Also valuable is the ever-present treachery, providing that 5% chance. Now I made sure to state the value of the life tap wand in the end, but against Lilith, I just ended up ignoring it. Must be all the testosterone in this guy's raging muscles, but when I saw Lilith, I just charged into her and wouldn't really say that it was the best of ideas. Although this did allow me to showcase how nice that near 4k life is with max battle orders. Makes the barb so much thicker and he just takes more hits. Still, I needed to use health and a rejuvenation potion because the worst item in the game was not casting life tap. Who could have guessed that? But in the end, it actually did and everything was fine. Crisis averted. Now since I didn't use manual life tap against Lilith, it would almost be a crime to use it against Iswal. Iswal is just way easier anyways, doing way less damage. I did manage to take some though while trying to howl all the necros away. That can be annoying when your life tap overrides your howl curse. Thanks Drax for doing that as well. So you have to keep casting howl again and again, but thankfully it was not fatal in this case. For Duriel, I did decide that it was time to take life tap into my own hands and went in with the wand against him. Duriel actually does do fairly less damage, but I was again afraid of getting swarmed by mosquitoes, which are especially annoying since they're physical immune, but thankfully that did not happen and the overall mini-Uber's experience was quite painless in the end. The main guys, yeah, it could have started better I guess. When I tried to separate the three brothers about to die in vain, Diablo caged me and then I almost died, keyword almost, but then started the Mephisto fight. That makes it sound like I died a lot in this fight. I didn't, but there certainly were a lot of close moments. That's crazy, especially considering that my light res was a very comfortable 51 under his conviction. I was taking huge damage and with every whiff and miss of my sword seemed like it counted as I was not able to gain back any health. This really shows the importance of two things. Number one, Smite, and how obviously it is so nice to just have 100% accuracy against everything. And number two, max IAS breakpoints and how they allow you to recuperate from a swing and miss and regen health with the next attack so quickly. Bale was quite a mess. Again, I did not end up dying throughout the whole experience, so it definitely could have been worse, but I did have to use a lot of mana, health and rejuvenation potions, and I also occasionally stop hitting to howl his minions away because otherwise my barb would just start splitting his frenzy between Bale and his physical immune minions, which is again a problem that you won't have with the SMITER since Smite is single target only. Frenzy 2 is not bad, as you can see as I finish up Diablo. It does get the job done, but that's not the message that you want to give with your posh guy really though, is it? I mean, with the SMITER, I was literally walking down the Ubers giving them no respect, whereas here, I actually have to work and really rely on every bit of my nice gear. Also, every bit of my not so nice gear. Where's my life tap proc, Drax? High crushing blow definitely helps here, which is something that I would definitely focus on a lot more in my future builds as well. Right now, let's just get this large charm home, and again, you can just see how much more beaten up the state of this guy is with more than half of his belt empty. A stark contrast to the SMITER, who could probably do a few more Uber runs without a refill. Anywho, this does require more effort, but maybe it leads to better rewards. No. 10, 10, Amazon. Wow. I've done it, boys. I found the coveted anti-perfect duplicate torch. Pretty sure it is just as rare as a perfect one, and guess what the cherry on top of the cake is? It is duplicate. Things you absolutely love to see. Hopefully with a less posh / OU setup we can get better results, and that's exactly where the budget-ish barb comes in. Again, I wouldn't go so far as to say that this guy is budget. Farming the items that I have on this guy does take a little bit of time, but you can do it in a fun way. You can find everything that I've shown on this guy at Hell Mephisto, farming with a startup Blizzard Sorceress. Now for his weapon, he has a familiar face in the form of Heaven's Light. Now it might be weird to see a Paladin based weapon featured on a Barbarian, but what can I say? It's just a good weapon. This particular one is not that good. Like I mentioned previously, it has a horrible enhanced damage roll, 6 off of anti-perfect, and that does matter with this guy unlike the SMITER. Then we have the bad roll of 1 socket of a possible 2, which did lead me to make some tougher gear choices. But even with that, 40% total IAS in the primary slot is pretty solid to have, and the reason that you're using this weapon is for the very solid 33% chance of crushing blow it provides, with the base damage that touches 1000 to 1500 easily, and you can farm this from Hell Mephi. Win win win. Speaking of damage though, its cousin, the Redeemer, which is my choice in the offhand, may be the star of the show here, because this thing's damage will go way beyond of what is advertised because of that plus 118 damage modifier, which is 2 off of perfect actually. That makes this weapon do considerably more damage than the numbers on the stat screen show. Now sure, it is not a grief, but like mentioned before, it is the next best thing, with good ED stats and extra percentage damage to demons as well, since demons are all that you're going to be fighting in the Uber fights. Now with Heaven's Light, I hit 73% crushing blow with my other gear, and with this weapon I hit 40%. That 40% comes from Goblin Toes, probably the only static piece of gear across all my builds. Apart from Drax, but they might as well not be there. Yeah, these are solid with 25% crushing blow, playing a very important role in this guy's offense. Speaking of, his armor is the offensive based Duress as well. I love this armor. The extra 15% crushing blow it provides is always nice, but the 33% open wounds are crucial. That's because I do not have Prevent Monster Heal on this guy, and this is my only source to combat the monster region that the Ubers have. Also, I am a little bit nervous about my damage, so this will probably play a huge part in finishing off Ubers when they get down to very low health. Also, 40 FHR is huge, and the little bit of rest that it provides goes a long way when every little bit counts. Okay, so I guess Drax also offered the open wounds that I just mentioned, so that is fine. Yeah, it is just fine. I almost wanted to put in 20% increased attack speed gloves on here instead for this guy, because I did need 25% IAS in total to reach the second highest breakpoint. For it though, I'm going with my trusty Kira's, providing me with Cannot Be Frozen, 69 all res, 30 extra light res from Mephisto, and 15% increased attack speed with the Jewel. Now I did consider Ariad's face for this, since Barb skills, bonus to attack rating, and all the mods that thing offers would be really nice. However, I just needed the res boost so damn much, so I just couldn't pass the Kira's up. Now for extra 10% IAS, you can probably tell that I went with Nose Coil. A very rarely used belt for Ubers, and for good reason. It really doesn't hold a candle to Verdungos or even String of Years. The only thing it provides me is 10% increased attack speed, which I guess I do desperately need, and then just 10% slow target for whatever that's worth. 39 vitality and 15 damage reduction would have been so much superior, but you take what you get and you don't get upset. To cheer us up though, we remember that our cannot be frozen is taken care by the Kiras, and therefore I could use 2 angelic rings for a massive 2000 base attack rating bonus on this guy. Along with the angelic wings, of course. The sad news is, my attack rating is still worse than my posh barbarian, even with 2 full-fledged angelic halos. The reason? My charms. Now, like I did with the SMITER, I have the charms here because I think this gives a more realistic approximation to what you can expect to find doing 1000 Mephisto runs. Especially if you're running LK alongside as well, which you absolutely should. I was contemplating adding a torch to his inventory just as a this isn't going to be your first Uber character now, is it? But hey, who am I to judge your fetishes, am I right? The mercenary is about as bare bones as the barbarian as well. He has an obedience, a non-ethereal one, because I think that it is something more realistically achievable, even while beating hell. Also in that vein we have treachery, which is just an absolutely awesome merc armor, and also a vampire gaze. Now this is my poor man's rendition of my defensive mercenary. I would have loved to use my conviction support or offensive merc here, but you're not building an infinity and fortitude while you're farming Mephisto now, are you? So it would really not seem fair. Finally, the utilitarian gear is the same. Teleport staff, life tap wand, demon limb, from which I actually might end up using a couple of charges on this thing if things get too dire, and lastly treachery with 5%. Oh hey, also my switch is still dual Hodos. These are just substituting for +3 barb/warcry sticks, which are fairly easy to farm from Mala, and I'm just too lazy to do so, so I'm just keeping these. Whatever you end up going with, make sure to get max battle orders, because Lilith is scary. You can see here that I just ran when I saw her and inadvertently ended up dragging her near to the portal. It's not just that Lilith is scary here, it's also that I don't have a lot of faith in my gear. Check this out for example. The +1 to skill from battle command is actually necessary at all times if I want to reach the second highest breakpoint of frenzy. So yeah, the gear is not the greatest, but it is also not the worst. You can tell from this fight that it is not too slow, nor too fast, not too tough, but not too easy neither. It actually slots right in the wheelhouse of just enough, which is very nice. Also it helps in this case that my mercenary got positioned perfectly right behind Lilith so that he could go ham on her without any danger of dying, which helped out a lot actually. Speaking of positioning, that ain't too tough with Iswal. Now once I got to him, dragging him back near to the portal is just as easy as running towards it and howling to scare the various mobs away. 1 point in increased speed pays dividends here. Also I noticed here that my Fate proc had come off. Not that you really need to set up for this guy anyways, because he's literally the worst and is the easiest fight I will face throughout. In fact, he's so easy that I actually tried to switch to treachery to have him cast Fade on me, so I won't have to wait before the next fight. That didn't happen though, sadly. Once I did get the boring old Fade progged manually, I faced Duriel. Again, another easy and uneventful fight. From the mini Ubers, Lilith really is the most dangerous because, especially with this guy, getting rid of minions around the other two is pretty easy with Howl. The fight itself is slow, yes, but the high crushing blow definitely helps out a lot here. It would help if you did something too, Pratham, you know? He's malfunctioning a bit, guys, as freaking usual. Now after graduating from the school of mini Ubers, it was time to take on the major ones. First up, we had Bale. Now I tried to separate Mephisto first, but Bale was the first one to volunteer, so I didn't want to be rude. Out of the three major Ubers, I would say that the fight with him went the best. That's because there weren't any close encounters here. His minions were annoying, but Howl did a good job of clearing them out. Speaking of minions, this was the fight where I realized that my mercenary was a holy freeze mark instead of blessed aim. Oh dear, this was the third Uber run I was doing with this guy, and I just realized this. Oh dear. I could have had a very substantial attack rating boost this whole time and noticed it after all this time. I swear I'm good at this game, guys. Please don't leave. Well, Bale did leave and left a big pool of blood, as you can see here. That shows you the importance of passive damage that I got from open wounds right there. Absolutely massive. Now after changing mercs for no apparent reason because he always was gonna die to Mephisto anyways, I battled Mephisto. Now I was quite scared of him, quite like Lilith. Even though my lightning res was okay at 46 under his conviction, he was still doing some hefty damage to me through a multitude of attacks. A little lapse in concentration and he and his minions could have fried my guy up easily, so I had to constantly keep up on my howls, attacks, and pay that Drax continued to cast life tap on him. I did end up using a fair few rejuves on him as well, as you can see. That was expected though, and it really wasn't that many. I think I ended up using like 3 in that fight, which is very acceptable, considering that I didn't need a refill for Diablo. Now Mephisto had higher damage with low HP, Bale had low damage with high HP, Diablo was the sweet spot, except not that sweet for me. His minions are an absolute pain as well. Going back to the point I mentioned with the last guy, so you can see better here in action, since Frenzy is an area of effect attack and Howl is not 100% guaranteed to work, you can get stuck in a situation like I was, hitting a Pit Lord instead of Diablo because my target got stuck on him, and then losing a bunch of life because I was not leeching back from the life tap that I had on Diablo. Thankfully that only happened once, but it could have been very scary and I ended up just killing that Pit Lord and how any others that spawned immediately to focus solely on Diablo. Thankfully my Fade and life tap just lasted long enough, and with Crushing Blow, some okay raw damage, and a big pool of blood under Diablo as well, I was able to retrieve another torch. Okay, I have 2 Pally, 3 Barbs, and 3 Zones so far. Let's see if our efforts with this guy paid out. 16 Sork. I'll take it. Although I was going for the 2020 Druid, since that is the next character I want to target, getting a Source Torch is always huge, and I'll take it, especially with that above average roll on this one. Thus with that, we're back to the expensive boys now. Now the catch here is that most of the expensive Frenzy Barbs use 2 swords because there are a lot of expensive swords like Grandfather, Grief, Death, etc. We're gonna use axes instead. For that we have the beefy primary weapon, the unique Berserker Axe, Death Cleaver. Sort of the single player version of Grief. No, it is not as broken, doesn't have the plus damage stat cred, but it does have very good enhanced damage, up to 280, from which I have a 275% roll. On top of that, I put a 40 ED Jewel in there to juice it up further. The highlight stat for me though is the 66% chance of Deadly Strike, allowing this weapon to do double damage 2/3 of the time on its own accord, which is brilliant. What's also brilliant is the fact that it has 40% IAS, which essentially makes it self-sustainable since it is the exact IAS this guy needs to get to the max breakpoint of Frenzy. That is facilitated by my secondary weapon of choice, one which you probably already made out from the red hot aura, Beast. Now, you saw me create this very expensive weapon in my 9000 pally runs video, and mostly I plan to use it on bear sorks and summon necros, but hell, this makes a great melee weapon as it is. First, it has that level 9 fanaticism aura which adds 29% IAS, 80% additional attack rating and 186 enhanced damage, which is great. Then it also has 40% IAS, up to 270% ED, from which I have a 2 off of perfect roll. Man, I really lucked out on these expensive gear options. And then it has the trio of some of the most important stats that you need for an uber fight: Crushing Blow, Open Wounds, and Prevent Monster Heal. Very much akin to Kingslayer from our first Barb outing, and this thing makes for a great secondary hand choice. Now with this main weapon, my Crushing Blow is up to 80%, that is because I get 60% elsewhere from my gear, that elsewhere being 35% from G-Face and 25% from Goblin Toes, which are identical from my Sword Barb. Actually, the rest of the entire gear is identical as well, since I mentioned before that I don't really need off-weapon IAS, quite like in the case of Grief. This will also provide us with a good apples-to-apples comparison of the axes and swords in general. I gotta say, the axes are pretty badass, even though they don't look as badass since it looks like I'm holding a pair of cold kills. But anyways, you can see the stats here. One thing different for this guy is that I have channeled points into vitality in such a way that after battle orders with my switch of dual Hodos, of course, I have exactly 4000 health. Now that is obviously plenty and a very satisfying figure, but what this also allows me to do is put extra points into dexterity so that my attack rating sits at a very pleasing figure as well, over 21,000. That is the best that I have been able to achieve this far, and I'm sure that it will pay dividends. Especially now that I have fixed my mercenary. He's now a blessed A merc, which adds an additional 10,000 to my attack rating, and fittingly, he's also an offensive based merc with Infinity, Fortitude, and Endarial Swisage as well. Finally, the utility stuff is the same: teleport stuff, life tap wand, dummy demon limb, and treachery. Now I hate to sound like a broken record, but the performance of this weapon really shows how good Grief is. You know what, for the rest of this video, I won't take Grief's name again, okay? For the entire video I feel like I've been talking about nothing but Grief. I won't take its name again. So, that weapon that is the opposite of happiness, that's really good, isn't it? God damn it. No, but seriously, with this guy I think I had the worst run of mini Ubers. Partially due to some bad gameplay, which you saw there in the Lilith fight. I apparently forgot that I had Howl, which I could have used to clear out the field a bit before starting the fight with Lilith, but instead I choose to hightail it out of there. Other than that, she didn't cause me too many problems. My attack rating was good, so I was constantly healing back from life tap. The damage output was high enough as well. You can see that in the end where it really starts to taper off, but it is still very much fine and very much doable. Now embarrassingly, my poor luck with mini Ubers showed in the Izzy fight as well. Now the damage that he dealt here was more due to the necromancers surrounding him. You can see that my barb had life tap cast on him, and I mistakenly thought that there was life tap on Ijwal instead. Due to that, I just went on head in full steam without using my life tap wand. Of course, the only source of life tap without it is my Drax, but I mean, I don't even need to shit talk in this segment. They cast literally in the final seconds when I'm almost about to KO him anyways as a final FU. Absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of, the Duriel fight. Now Forgotten Sands in this role was Mosquito City, which is awful since they're physical immune. It took me like 5 minutes to find Duriel in the first place, and even when I found him, I was swarmed by a mosquito boss pack. Therefore I had to fend off the boss, howl the minions away, and drag Duriel into a corner. Backing into a corner may not sound like a sound strat, but it at least allows me to have a guarantee that I won't attract any mosquitoes from behind. Here too, the fight was a slog. The rune word whose name shall not be taken would have done way better here since I was relying on raw damage a lot. Considering that my beast had 80% chance of crushing blow, you really are not seeing a lot of red explosions on him, and it shows in his HP as well. Again, it is nothing devastating, right? Obviously, even if I was able to damage him super quick and consistently, at least I was leeching back all the damage that he was able to dish out and remained at full health for pretty much the entire fight. I gotta say that if I hadn't lost my merc to the mosquito pack earlier, this fight would have been a lot easier with his conviction and blessed aim support, but still, my barb still got it done. Hopefully he carries that forward while fighting the big guys. Bale was up first. Now again, I would have loved to have my mercenary for this fight since that boost in attack rating would have been nice, and Bale really does not have threatening damage output at all. At least I wasn't constantly frozen here like in the Duriel fight, and thus was able to land some nice crushing blows at max IAS frames, which makes all the difference. Towards the tail end of the fight, his ghost minions were able to unknowingly attack me with mana burn and chain a couple of attacks, but I was able to fend them off with Howl and finish Bale off as well. Then came Mephisto. Now this guy had the worst lightning res yet going into the fight at 41, and Mephisto's damage output does tell the story all by itself. Even though I was able to cast Life Tap pretty early on in the fight, his charge bolts were brutal, dropping me dangerously low every time and forcing me to use a full rejuve. That genuinely was the closest to death any of my barbs came during this whole process, with him and his minions putting in work at my lowered resistances. But thankfully I was able to dodge disaster and finish the fight deathless. Hoping that my run of no deaths continued, we fought Diablo last. Now fought for this guy seems appropriate. I will give the Frenzy Barb this. He's definitely worse than the SMITER for doing Uber runs, but you feel like you actually did something. With the SMITER, no matter what gear I put on him, the fights were more or less like a cakewalk. Not with this guy. If Diablo spawns a Pit Lord and you don't howl him away right away, he will get locked on you and your frenzy will then get split, which may get you killed. Thankfully none of that transpired here, but it sure did feel like a hard-earned battle in the end. Hopefully the torch luck can mirror the effort. 17, 19, Amazon. Does anybody need to buy an extra Zon torch? Because I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them now. I mean, I guess this is a good one. That's the only positive I'm taking from that. Damn. Speaking of little positives, I'll say it up front. This is a bad idea, and I don't expect it to do too well. Definitely not comparing it to Grief or anything. However, I want to try out this final experimental build still because 1, I want to know how genuinely it does, and 2, it gives me a chance to show off my perfect Stormlash. Come on man, finding this thing is like the peak of my Diablo 2 career. It's all downhill from here. It is a very nice peak though, since like I mentioned before, it is perfect with 9 lightning absorb and 300% enhanced damage. That enhanced damage, no joke, you might think right now that my offhand weapon is Grief. Trust me, it is anything but. This weapon is actually my main raw damage dealing weapon. Now that's good because 300% perfect ED, 9% ED Jewel for whatever that's worth, and max damage stat of 327. The reason that it is bad is because this weapon has a minimum damage stat of 12. Literally 12. That provides such a huge damage variations that when you average the damage, it comes close to a 160 base, which is not exactly impressive when you're going up against the tankiest monsters in the game. However, we thankfully have other stats on here to compensate. First is the obvious standout of 33% crushing blow, Really nice stat, considering that with my standard expensive gear, this gets me to 93% crushing blow, which is very good. It also has the lightning absorb, which we talked about before, and that will hopefully come in clutch against Mephisto. Finally, we have the stat of 15% chance to cast level 10 static field, which we talked about before as well, and I don't think it really played a major role in the Smiter's fight. Here, however, we're turning it up to 11 with my secondary weapon, Crescent Moon. Now, like I mentioned, this is definitely a 100% a bad idea. Right off the bat, you never want to have two different weapon types when you're using Frenzy, since the Scourge is a mace and this Phase Blade is a sword. Therefore, I had to max both the masteries and had to take point out of Frenzy synergies to do that as well. That will mean that I'll have even lower raw damage, but I'm just excited to see what these dual static field procs can do against the Ubers. Of course, to help the case, this weapon grants minus 35% enemy lightning res, and when you combine that with the conviction aura from my Mercenary's Infinity, static field actually starts to look a lot more appealing. Of course, it will still be trash against Mephisto, since my Merc's conviction will get cancelled out anyways, if he even survives long enough in that fight, but for other mobs, we may be going totally ham on them. Let's find out, and as I mentioned, the rest of my gear is identical to the previous expensive builds, including the Merc, and including the utilities of Teleport Staff, Life Tap Wand, Dummy Demon Limb, and... Now first up is Lilith, and being the naughty girl that she is, she was pretty much able to feast on my mercenary before I could even lay my hands on her. Once I did though, it was okay. See, even though Crescent Moon has minus 35% lightning res, it really needs that conviction aura as well, otherwise the Uber's resistances are just too dang high for static field to do much. Still, it did do bits here, and I was able to get her health way below the L relatively fast. Then of course the fight slowed down, but we expected that. Here, most of the work is done by praying for high rolls from Stormlash and Open Wounds, which is another super nice modifier that Crescent Moon also adds, which I don't even think I mentioned, and slowly but surely, it took Lilith down. Next up was Izzy, and even after last time when he did some damage, I literally wore my treachery into this fight instead of Chains of Honor because I just did not respect his damage output at all, and guess what? I did absolutely fine. This could honestly be a new meta, you know? Just doing Izzy last and wearing treachery into this fight so that you can cast Fade and are ready to do Uber Tristram runs after that? Think of all the cricket noise sound effects you can avoid that way. Finally, we had Duriel. Now with this guy again, the starting was blisteringly good. Quite a lot better than what the dual axes put out, but the fight did slow down towards the tail end. My mercenary stayed alive for the whole affair, and you saw the carnage static field can cause in the beginning, absolutely hacking away at the bug's life in conjunction with crushing blow, so he really did not have a lot towards the end and was something that the raw damage from my Stormlash was able to take care of. Now for the major Ubers, things started out really well actually. I got Bale separated first, which was great because I wanted to face him with my mercenary alive. This allowed me to have very high attack rating, upwards of 30,000, and also dish out some lightning damage justice with Conviction Aura. However, when everything was going smoothly, of course, the big scary fire lizard just had to come in and ruin it for everyone. See, this is why nobody likes playing with you, Diablo. I'm outie. Now the real reason I retreated there was because I was getting surrounded with mana burn and had run out of mana potions, so I went to town to fix that. When I came back, I saw Mephisto standing all by himself, so I couldn't help but go in. Now this Mephisto fight was very eventful, to say the least. Of course my Merc died long before it started, because of course he did, but I wasn't counting on him anyways since Mephisto doesn't really have a lot of health, and thus not having my damage to its full potential is fine. What is not fine is surviving this fight. As if his conviction aura is not enough, his minions absolutely swarm you to death, distracting you from hitting him and leeching back using life tap. The real blows occurred afterwards though, when Mephisto was pretty much on 0.5 HP. He really unleashed all the damage and I officially came the closest to death I've been with all the barbs in this video. Which is saying something, but boy was that just a scary little reminder that never sleep on Mephisto, even if you're just 5 hits away from finishing him off. Speaking of finishing off things, Bale and Diablo were still left. I got a pleasant surprise when I got to the latter though. Turns out Static Field had put in work and Diablo was at half health when I started fighting him. For the first time, pretty much the only scenario where the AoE of Static Field would have come into the picture, but I'll take it. From there, it was all Crushing Blow, Open Wounds, and whatever raw damage Stormlash gave me, and that was the carry. Mephisto had Conviction, Bale has annoying mana burn minions, Diablo is mostly just so even though it took like 10 seconds to get him down from 1% of his health to 0, I was able to do it. Finally, we had Bale. A fitting end to the run and this video as well. Now he really annoyed me here since I didn't have Prevent Monster Heal on this guy and Bale just could not stop regenning from his minions here. Therefore I was stuck at 10% of his HP for ages, but when I was able to either howl the minions away or just generally distract them, I got to work and was able to take Bale down as well. Again, not the most impressive of performances from this last weapon set, but boy, I was not even sure if I will be able to make it all the way through. Having all the other expensive gear does help a ton, but boy was it a struggle. And as a reward for it, I'm going to get a big pull. Nope, just kidding, it's a 10/16 Amazon. Okay then, I'm going to go to the other room now, open the window and scream out for like 50 minutes for no reason. However, you may be wondering, why did I do 8 runs in this video when I promised 10 runs in my last one? That's where we come to the mini playthrough debacle. Now I tried doing Ubers with mini playthrough gear. Pretty much as dirt cheap and as no frills, no grind required, and the result was absolute shambles. I'll let you see the carnage, but really this got me to appreciate the value of good gear. You really feel it once you don't have it. Now here in this case I needed Crushing Blow but also Prevent Monster Heal at the same time. I just had no combination of gear available to make it happen, and thus Lilith here for example just kept regenning and wouldn't go below half health. Now I'm showing a death compilation because that's pretty much what the whole experience was in a nutshell. After a while, I just stopped doing damage due to the insane regen and insanely low base smite damage. Finally, what I decided on was that it was just not worth it. I was not having fun, it had been a stressful couple of days spent just trying to beat Lilith or Duriel, really. In the end, I concluded that you're better off just farming with a Blizzard Sorceress and finding some at least very basic gear like G-Face and Goblin Toes, and the experience would be night and day. Now, that being said, I maybe will try it again, maybe sometimes. We'll see. Let's not ramble for now though. The video is long as it is, so hope you find this content riveting. Yours truly, with love.